And we continue our special coverage this morning of crime in America, and we turn out our attention to the Midwest and Kansas City, Missouri.
According to FBI and the stats they keep, that city is the second most dangerous city in the Midwest and ranks in the top 10 for gun violence. But the city recently did receive a federal grant to help its policing, and the state's governor just signed a bill increasing the city's police department's budget from 20% of revenue per year to 25%.
Joining us now is the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, Quinton Lucas, to discuss his city's fight against crime. Mayor, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you taking out the time this morning. A report in the Kansas City Star cites one of your campaign promises was to reduce the number of homicides in Kansas City to under 100 per year. But that hasn't happened. Since you've been in office for the last 3 years, the number of homicides has hit triple digits every year. So how do you explain that? Why haven't you been able to fulfill that promise?
Well, very simply, it's guns. It is the ready and available access to any types of firearms, the lack of any restrictions in the state of Missouri. For those who don't know the Midwest, we are not unlike Texas. You have no requirement for concealed carry permits. Therefore, you have constitutional carry. Folks can access assault rifles very simply. There is little to no investigation of illegal gun traffickers and distributors. And our police are not just overworked, but they find themselves under risk of getting shot as well. We saw an officer buried in the suburbs of Kansas City just yesterday after a vehicle stop led to his death. These are the sorts of things and challenges that are happening in major cities around the country, and frankly, more and more small towns, more and more incidents. And I think right now, and I agree with Congresswoman Maloney, we need to have a serious chat of how is it that the flood of firearms without restrictions, without background checks being followed, how is that flood of firearms leading to more violent crime on our streets? And it's something you're seeing in every part of the country.
And you're a big advocate of gun control. Kansas City also became one of the first cities in a long time to sue a gun manufacturer. So you've been very clear on this front. But practically speaking, you know, gun violence is not a mayoral issue. It's a societal issue in a lot of ways. Just for folks to understand a little bit about government, how would you describe how much control a mayor, just a mayor and his staff at City Hall, his or her staff at City Hall, how much they really have, whether it's New York, Kansas City, or anywhere in between? What can you really do?
Yeah, you know, last week I was actually in New York. We had a press conference at Gracie Mansion with Mayor Adams, the mayors of Baltimore, St. Louis, Tampa, and a number of other American cities. And it was interesting because I think you caught from all of us great frustration. We are not the district attorneys that are making decisions on sentencing, on bail, and any number of those challenges. We're certainly not the judges, and we're not the police chiefs either, although in many situations we certainly get to influence them. Instead, what we are trying to do is actually bring resources together. Because the oddest thing that has happened since 2020, the protests and all of that, is that I think for a while in this country we lost sight of the fact that we are all actually rowing in the same direction. There is no community in our country that wants to see more deadly gun violence. There is no community in our country that doesn't want true bad actors off the streets. And there's no community in our country that doesn't want better trust between the community and the police, because that's how you solve crimes. And so I think what we get to do is actually marshal forces together. But I'll give you one vignette. I was at a church, I was talking to a lady, and I said, ma'am, I don't control that. But she said, you're the mayor. You're the mayor. If you can't control something, then why should I ever care about trying to change something? So we certainly take that position to try to be messengers, but no, it is a frustrating time when you've got legislatures, the United States Senate, that are fighting against real progress.
Let's talk about the legislative side of this. Missouri ranks in the bottom 10 for gun law strength. That's according to Everytown Research, and has the 4th highest rate of gun deaths. Where do you see gun legislation ranking in the upcoming midterm elections? What are you doing? What are state lawmakers in Missouri doing, maybe to pull support from the Republican side of the aisle to get something done?
Well, you know, I think, first of all, Missouri's laws in connection with gun control are totally backwards. We have a Second Amendment Preservation Act, which makes it a crime with a fine if our police department works with federal agencies in anything that may relate to a Second Amendment violation. How do they know? Who defines it? How does this avoid federal preemption? Nobody knows. They just pass these laws, so they're not worried about it. So how is it that we actually look to make this an issue? First of all, Democrats largely need to keep talking about it. If you look at any poll after Uvalde, after Highland Park, everyone says we have very real issues with gun violence. There is not a parent, Republican, Democrat, black, or white in our country, who doesn't say it is an abomination that the leading cause of deaths for children in America relate to guns, shootings, accidents, etc. I mean, that is problematic. So I think you keep pushing that message again and again. And importantly, rather than letting this be an election that is defined just on gas prices, wherever they'll be at that point, inflation, Ukraine, Russia, and I might even argue January 6th, to bring up something that I think is clear to everybody. We want our children, we want our families to be safe. I think everybody recognizes a country with 400 million guns is too many. We keep making that point, and I think that's how you can speak to suburban moderates, who I think have very real concerns that in states like Texas now, all the kids have to have clear black backpacks. It's insanity, and we want to make sure our children and our family are safe.
And for one thing, before we let you go, I mean, just the reality is you see the gridlock in D.C., and you're the mayor of a blue city in a deeply red state. So you're not going to get much traction on this issue from D.C. or from your state legislature. So let's bring it back to that local control issue. You think putting some cops back on horseback there in Kansas City would make a difference? You talked about that recently. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to take every solution we can. One of those is visibility and presence. And so, yes, I know horseback harkens back to much deeper and sadder times, but I just want people to know that there are actually going to be officers around. Officer presence still makes some level of difference. You see officers standing around Times Square, not so much because they're going to arrest a shoplifter at that very moment, but because you know if you start shooting off that there are officers there and there. I think in every city you need some element of that. This is a all hands on deck, every solution we can have type of issue, because fundamentally we've got to do better, and I think in Kansas City ultimately we can.
Mayor Quinton Lucas of Kansas City, Missouri, we appreciate you coming on our show.
Thank you.